You know, over the past 7 or 8 years, almost without anyone really noticing, we've been experiencing what might be the first big renaissance of big open-ended tactical shooters. Genres really in general across the AAA space continue to coalesce, leaving realistic tactical shooters almost completely outside the industry's self-imposed scope, save for the occasional NFT experiment. But on the smaller side of the games industry, we are in the middle of a boom, a burgeoning market of realistic multiplayer shooters perfectly tailored for us weirdos that like staring at a map as much as playing in the game that the map is showing. And maybe one of the best things about all these titles is while the market may be somewhat saturated, it's also diverse. Different settings, levels of realism, and approaches to gameplay make Scriptum and Hell Let Loose, for instance, feel less like competitors and more like alternatives that are great to swap between. While games across this somewhat niche genre have differences, they also share some commonalities, like steep learning curves, high skill ceilings, and specific elements that players can specialize in and get intimately familiar with, like piloting, which I am not intimate with. But my favorite is Squad, first released in 2015 by Offworld Industries. Since its early access days, Squad has changed a lot, adding new maps, vehicles, weapons, and factions that have not only supplemented the game, but expanded its tactical depth. I wouldn't argue Squad is necessarily better than the other games of its genre. In fact, Beyond the Wire and Scriptum, both published by Offworld Industries, are, in a sense, Squad spin-offs set in different eras. What Squad does well, many other games of its genre do well too, just in different ways. I think maybe one reason I prefer Squad is its own asymmetry and diversity. You'll get into battles pitting two advanced forces against one another, like the US and Russian army, both with high-powered optics and high-tech armor. Then you have factions like the Insurgents and Irregular Militia, groups that lack the optics and high-tech weaponry of the more advanced factions. Play a few rounds as the Insurgents and you'll definitely hear at some point, "How are we supposed to win without optics?" But herein lies part of Squad's brilliance. A rusty 1980-something Toyota Helix with an SPG bolted to the bed doesn't really stand a chance against a Leopard 2. But if the crew of that Helix is well-coordinated, communicative, and knows how to sight the SPG, it can present a legitimate threat to the Leopard, especially if the crew of the Leopard is not well-coordinated or communicative. Squad takes a bunch of weapon systems, some of them fairly sophisticated for a multiplayer game, dumps them into complex, massive, and incredibly dense multiplayer maps, and tells two teams of 50 players just to figure it out. I'd actually consider some of Squad's maps among the best multiplayer maps ever made, right up there with Lockout, Dust, Bridges of Druzina, and Nepal. Many of them are large and diverse enough that it really isn't difficult to imagine them as a setting for a single-player game. Talil Outskirts, one of Squad's older maps, has a large airfield surrounded by flat, though not entirely featureless desert, with a few moderately sized towns to the northeast. The airfield's runway kind of splits the airfield in two, and the majority of fights in and around the airfield are going to be medium to long range. The desert around the base provides ample room for outflanking enemy positions, but the terrain's lack of concealment, mixed with the airfield's many high points, means it's difficult to get anywhere unseen or unexposed. That is, unless the fight reaches West Al-Qadir and Batha, two small but dense towns in a desert oasis that change up the context. Here, the battle can become much more compact, as sight lines are not only cut by buildings, but also a windy river. Black Coast, one of Squad's newer maps, has much more variable terrain and a wide river that effectively cuts the entire map in half. In some game modes, the attacking team launches from an aircraft carrier and then has to establish a foothold. That river, though, can really complicate things. As objectives can skip across it, teams will need to coordinate helicopter transport back and forth and find a way to get ground vehicles safely across these bridges, which quickly become important and often very messy choke points. I love that these maps can be difficult and inconvenient to navigate. It keeps communication important and leaves matches open to sudden change. A quick-thinking squad can hop across the map, establish a presence somewhere the enemy didn't want it, and shift the entire outlook of a battle. Doing so, though, requires knowing where the fight is at, where it's going, what vehicles are available, and which routes to take. I don't think any game is a complete blank slate. All emergent gameplay gameplay comes from some kind of original framework, and Squad is obviously not alone in creating an emergent space. But when you combine its already slow pace, some really unintuitive mechanics and weaponry, and the harsh degree with which even small mistakes can be punished, Squad requires an amount of coordination, communication, and patience that is completely unlike anything else outside its genre. It may seem somewhat self-evident that because Squad is, if not at least feels, close to a simulator, it has to be played differently from other big market shooters. But I think there's a difference between understanding that conceptually and putting it into practice. Not every firefight in Squad is important, and not every enemy sighting is grounds for a chase. Like many games before it, Squad is all about objectives, but its scale and slow speed accentuate this. Most map sizes make getting anywhere take time. Spawn timers can get as high as a minute. Telling friend from foe isn't always easy, so you'll want to keep your map handy, and you have to place and build your team's spawn points. So something simple like breaking contact, i.e. knowing when to move and when to sustain a fight, might be easy to understand conceptually, but remaining mindful of breaking contact in the moment can be difficult. Before we get much further though, it's probably good to pause here and say that I am in no way an authority on Squad. I made this video out of love for the game and its genre and to share some opinions, not out of some desire to provide any kind of expertise, because I am not an expert in Squad, whether we're talking strategies, meta strategies, or the finer points of every vehicle and weapon. Anyway, how do you get a 50-person team filled with mostly randos on the same page? That's a good question. But I think it comes down to communication, a discussion of which will lead us to Squad's biggest problem. In Squad, Squad leaders are the linchpin to team cohesion. It's a Squad leader's job to coordinate spawn points, the team's plan of attack, and generally keep their squad all on the same page and working together. Squad leaders place radios, which enable fortifications like HABs. Outside main bases, HABs are the only spawn points for your entire team. Without them, sustaining any kind of engagement, attacking or defending, is extremely difficult, if not impossible. A good match of Squad will start with squad leaders coordinating troop movement, saying where their squad is going and where they'll place radios and HABs in order to establish a foothold on the map and create a path toward capturing objectives. A squad leader can't build a HAB and radio on their own though. They'll need a logistics vehicle like a helicopter or truck, ammo and build resources which are transported via logistic vehicles, and a few nearby troops with shovels to actually build structures, since squad leaders themselves don't have shovels. All players communicate on two levels, a local voice chat and their squad-specific radio chat. Squad leaders also have a third level of comms, command radio, which connects them to their team's other squad leaders and their team commander. If, for whatever reason, you need to talk with a teammate that's outside the range of local voice chat and not in your squad, you'll have to communicate via squad leaders. Squad leaders not only need to react to what's happening around them, but also keep in mind the larger picture of a match and how best to position their squad in order to take and hold objectives, all while communicating with command, the people around them, and their squad mates. I know I'm belaboring the point here, but this is all to establish just how important and vital squad leaders are to a team. Spawn points and team-wide communication flows through them, and so too does their team's chance at winning. Knowing that, I imagine it wouldn't surprise you to learn that Squad has a bit of an issue of no one actually wanting to lead a squad. That's not to say that there are never any squad leaders, or that there aren't a lot of very good squad leaders. Join a game on a Saturday night, and it's likely you'll find a game with an SL that sounds damn near professional. But off-peak hours, and even during peak hours, it's not uncommon to find yourself in a game with squad leaders that don't want the role or formed a squad because there weren't any other squads to join. Occasionally, even games will start and there will be this awkward waiting period where pilots and drivers form and lock their vehicle squads, and then a few seconds go by as everyone waits for someone to start an infantry squad, like a Mexican standoff where everyone waits to see who hits create squad first. As to why this is, I think it's due to a few reasons. Plenty of people legitimately enjoy playing specialized classes, like the anti-tank or grenadier class, and there's nothing wrong with that. Being a squad leader means you get the responsibility of, well, leading. You don't just take part in the battle, you're managing it. You're not only talking with your squad, but communicating with other squad leaders and making decisions that will have an impact on your team's success or failure. Not every reason for someone not wanting to lead a squad is a problem. It's completely understandable and reasonable for someone to just not want to. There are plenty of people who know their role, listen, communicate, and play the objective. It is not rare to find players willing to work as a team and plan out somewhat complex strategies without so much as a hello for an introduction. But for all the understandable reasons people don't want to lead squads, I think the biggest issue is that Squad, as a game, has a toxicity problem. Okay, calm down. I'm not accusing anyone, I'm being honest. And I'm not blameless here. I can't say that I've never reacted to angry commanders and squad leaders with deadpan sarcasm, because yeah, I have. Everyone has bad days, we're all human, and Squad is clearly not the only game with toxicity problems. But the toxicity in Squad is beyond that of general frustration. It is inordinate and pervasive. Matches in Squad are long, intense, and can easily become unplayable if a team doesn't effectively run logistics, like spawn points, ammo crates, and repair stations. All that stress and intensity manifests into a lot of frustration, sensitivity, defensiveness, and quick tempers. I have, on multiple occasions, seen players switch teams and sabotage player-built structures like radios, habs, and gun emplacements. Plenty, if not all, public servers have rules against stuff like that, and in my experience, blatant team killing and the like is usually penalized with kicks and server bans, and usually pretty quickly. But general toxicity, like just being an inconsiderate jerk, is obviously much harder to regulate. I think, especially for new players, Squad's toxicity makes the game intimidating to learn. Even in servers with new player-friendly tags, there's no guarantee that the randos you happen to meet in the server will care to honor those tags. More specifically though, Squad's toxicity creates a feedback loop wherein players see the pressure and responsibility associated with leading squads, and then avoid playing as a squad leader due to that pressure, which then leads to servers full of inexperienced squad leaders playing that role only because it's required, which leads to bad games full of miscommunication, toxicity, and frustration, which leads to players seeing the pressure and responsibility associated with leading squads and avoiding that role. As an example, let's say you decide to try out being a squad leader. You went to the training range, you practiced a bit, observed other players lead squads, and now you want to try it yourself. You join a game, you get to an objective, and you build a hab. Later in that game, that hab is destroyed by enemy artillery. The other squad leaders condemn and chastise you for being dumb enough to put a hab out in the open and not in a building. What an idiot. Okay, harsh, but you've learned your lesson. In the next game, you get to an objective and place a hab in a building. It's tricky to set down, but at least it won't be artillery to dust. Later in that game, your team only ends up with one hab, the one you built, meaning the whole team has to spawn there, and that's not your fault. Unfortunately, an enemy vehicle rolls up outside the building and the whole place becomes a complete cluster of smoke grenades, sporadic heavy machine gun fire, and spawn kills. People get frustrated, the other squad leaders condemn and chastise you for being dumb enough to put a hab in a building. What an idiot. Experiences like that drive people away from being squad leaders, which not only lessens the quality of matches, but hurts Squad as a video game. It's especially problematic off-peak hours, but even Friday nights and weekends are not immune to matches of disorganized and antagonistic squad leaders. And that culture, well, it sucks. It's a problem Squad has that has nothing to do with the game itself, but undeniably affects the game itself. This doesn't mean that you're a bad person if you get frustrated by a lack of communication or teamwork, or if you take Squad seriously and really try. The best part about Squad are all the players you'll find who will buckle down, listen, communicate, and play their role. True story, I was in a game once, and a commander called an artillery strike on an objective. There were a few squads with random troops running toward the area where the strike was going to hit, and the commander and various squad leaders warned them minutes beforehand that it wasn't safe. When the strike hit, a bunch of players who, for whatever reason, wandered into the barrage were killed, and the commander was auto-kicked for team killing. Being frustrated by that is far from an unreasonable reaction. Squad can be a drag, and matches like this are inevitable, where friendly habs are non-existent, your team is sporadically scattered all over the place, and despite your efforts to coordinate, communication is sparse, and a slogging half-hour game ends with a major loss. It happens. This doesn't mean players, new or experienced, should be derided or harassed for making mistakes or just losing. Squad is, after all, only a video game. But I don't want this whole video to be about toxicity in Squad. I love Squad. Like a lot of other multiplayer games, it has a wealth of strategies, and its open-ended, emergent design only reinforces the variety of ways a team can go about capturing objectives and winning. Its most popular game modes, Advance and Secure, Random Advance and Secure, and Invasion, are likely familiar to anyone that's ever played Battlefield. Two teams with a finite amount of tickets compete for objectives. Tickets are added or subtracted to a team's total for a variety of reasons, like player deaths, vehicles destroyed, radios destroyed, and objectives captured or lost. If your team's tickets drop to 0, you lose. For all of Squad's great organic gameplay though, there are a lot of strategies I really dislike, not because they're toxic, but because I just don't think they're good strategies. Before that though, a few important disclaimers. My opinion here is based on my own experience, which according to Steam is about 250 hours. It's completely possible that some of the strategies I dislike, I just haven't seen executed well. Also, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just looking at these strategies the wrong way. Finally, if you're someone who swears by these strategies, that's fine. I don't think you're a bad person. So to start, Super Habs. Super Habs are a fun idea that in practice are impractical. They go something like this. As the team battles for objectives elsewhere around the map, one squad sits back and fortifies one objective to the teeth, building lots of cover, gun emplacements, ammo crates, and generally making that objective and its hab as secure and defensible a position as possible. Once the battle reaches the Super Hab, the enemy will get bogged down in a battle of attrition, breaking upon the fortress like water on rock. At least that's the idea. There are a lot of problems with Super Habs. Building emplacements takes time and resources. That means you'll need logistics vehicles to constantly resupply the radio with new resources, taking that vehicle and its resources away from the other objectives and the rest of your team's habs. If the Super Hab becomes the center of the battle, all those gun emplacements have to be manned, used effectively, and restocked with ammo. But what if the enemy isn't attacking in the direction of your gun emplacements? If your team is heavily concentrated in a single area, that not only makes them vulnerable to artillery fire and other call-ins, but it also means the enemy can disrupt supply lines since you don't have squads spread out around the objective. And without Logi runs, a Super Hab can run out of ammo really quick. There's also no guarantee that once the battle reaches your Super Hab, tickets are playing out in your favor. It's entirely possible the enemy team has done a much better job staying alive and not wasting tickets, thus turning the match into a battle of attrition may not necessarily benefit your team. A better defense, I think, is covering the objective from multiple directions and spreading out, forcing the enemy to fight to get to the objective rather than getting there relatively unopposed. And if you're playing Advance and Secure, taking the enemy's objective will always be a good way to force the other team to pull troops away from attacking your objective to defending theirs. Elsewhere, Squad has two classes I think are often used ineffectively: the Sniper/Marksman and the Medic. A squad leader can make two squad mates fire team leaders, which allows them to mark the map and place order marks for other players in their fire team. This is useful as a fire team leader can mark enemy positions or vehicles, and then the squad leader can communicate those marks over command chat. Oftentimes, the Sniper is used as a scout for this purpose. Not all classes on all teams have optics, but snipers always do, meaning they'll have an advantage at spotting enemies and enemy movement. The thing is though, there are other classes with additional abilities that I think make them more fit for recon roles. The Sapper/Combat Engineer classes come with binoculars as well as explosives like anti-tank mines. These classes can do all the target finding a sniper can do, and their explosives mean they can disrupt enemy supply lines and even destroy radios, habs, and other emplacements. And even though, for some factions, these classes use iron sights, it shouldn't be much of a problem since recon isn't a direct combat job, at least in the video game we're talking about. With all that said, only a few of those classes are available per team, so each squad can't run with a Sapper or Combat Engineer. A few also have the ability to build sandbags and barbed wire and can even help repair vehicles, things that are obviously less useful when they're out scouting enemy positions. Even so, if a player is going to separate themselves from their squad, whether it be to scout for habs or observe for mortar squads, I think it's more useful to send out sappers and engineers, giving them the fire team leads and keeping marksmen and snipers close by and playing the objectives. Medium and long range fire support is useful in a firefight, but in a scouting role, the big scope just turns into an optic that can shoot bullets. On the flip side, the medic is a class that I think is underrated. Medics are capable of not only healing teammates, but keeping an entire team afloat. When you're downed in squad, you have a bleed out timer that keeps you available for revive by any teammate with a bandage. Medics start with several bandages, revive teammates much faster, and can heal troops once they're back up. If you're revived by any other class, it'll save your team the ticket, but you'll have low health, which can harm visibility and weapon accuracy. A medic can patch all that up for multiple teammates in under a few minutes. Of course, medics can't force players to stay patient and wait for a revive, so their medical powers are limited. But still, I'd argue a few hard-working medics in the aggregate can save a team more tickets than other combat-oriented classes can make the enemy team spend. My final opinion, never rules don't work, like never put the hab outside, or even never try to build a super hab. Yeah, that's right, I'm disagreeing with myself, so you can quit blasting the comment box. But please don't, cause I actually need the engagement. Too much in squad is contextual for there to be hardline never rules. Where's the enemy? Where are they going? Where's the objective? Where are our habs? What's the status of our vehicles? All these questions are ones you'll have to consider when deciding on how to go about winning a game. When paired with squad's massive, diverse, and excellent maps, each with their own different terrain and geographic details, those decisions may become easier or harder, safer or riskier. The most dangerous weapons in squad are teamwork, organization, and communication. Every single weapon and vehicle can change the tide of a battle if pointed in the right direction and aimed correctly. The satisfaction from effectively coordinating and communicating, from adapting to changing circumstances in a large dynamic battlefield, win or lose, is difficult to match, and that's made Squad one of my favorite games of all time.